Today we're going to find out if the random flow generators are actually random. Hey guys, Devin with ReefDudes. Now today we're going to be checking out the RFGs from Vivid Creative Aquatics. Now to be honest, I've been a little bit skeptical about these. I haven't really been 100% is it really going to be random in the tank? You know, I figured it'd be great in a small tank, but how would it do in a large aquarium like this? So today we're going to test it out and find out for sure. Now I did pick up a 3/4 inch one for the big tank and a 1/2 inch one as well for the nano I'm going to be setting up next week. So let's jump in, we'll install it, and we'll see how it compares to the other random one I printed out. So we're going to start by unplugging the two MP40s and the CP40, so all other flow in the tank will be turned off. Okay, so here's the nozzle that I 3D printed. You can kind of see it is fairly straight. It does kind of work as a bit of a flow accelerator. Now, I figured this would be the same thing. However, it doesn't really seem to be random, so let's try the Vivid Creative Aquatics version. Now looking at it, the flow does seem more gentler. Now it also does, it seems a little more heavy on the bottom, but it is turning around a little bit, so there's definitely some randomness coming out of it. Now putting my hand in front of it, I actually can feel the waves going in a bit of a circular pattern. Doesn't necessarily feel like it'll push it the distance. Now, being that it's more gentle, I can probably also turn up the flow of my pump a bit and see if that makes a difference for being more random. So I'm going to turn the vector up to about 60-70%. It was previously at 50. And we'll kind of watch the bubbles and see what the flow does. Now stepping back and taking a bit of a look, I did turn the pump up quite a bit to try and get a little more of the random action. A bit of movement you can see in the hammer coral. The anemone, same thing a little bit. Although surprisingly, at the far end of the tank, the torch is moving quite a bit, as well as the Duncan coral. So there actually is honestly more flow than I thought I would see out of the nozzle, which is promising, it's great to see. Now this is running the pump at about 90%. Now if I turn it back down to where it previously was, at around 50%, we'll see what kind of movement we get out of the far end of the tank. Alright guys, so this is the vector running back at 55%. Still has a decent amount of flow out of it. Looking at the far length, I still have decent movement in my Duncan, so it is creating a decent flow. A little bit of movement in the hammer. Surprisingly, I'm seeing a little more movement on these tentacles than I thought. This guy isn't totally moving too much. He's getting a little bit of a sway to it. The one nice thing is that the flow is more gentle. You're not blasting your corals. I think this thing would be great in a nano tank, so I'm really excited to see how that works out next week. It honestly is doing better than I thought it would on a large tank, so we got a good idea of flow. This is probably one of the more surprising ones down there for me. Now let's swap back to just the one I 3D printed myself and kind of compare it and see which one does a better job. Now you can definitely see this one is more of a stream jet. So it has the same kind of swirls inside. I mean, it's just one I found online and 3D printed myself. So it's more of a focus jet more than a broad flow all over the place. That's the first thing that stands out to me. I'm definitely seeing similar flow in the Duncans, maybe almost a little bit more flow using this nozzle, but then again I'm pointing straight down towards it. If I say angle it towards the center rock in the SPS a little bit, we'll see how that changes it. Okay, now there's very little movement in the Duncans again, just from shifting it over. A bit of movement in the torch still. So now let's try and keep it in the same position, and we'll swap back to the VCA nozzle. Okay, so that's about aimed about the same position. So from what I'm finding, you do seem to get more random flow with more flow through the nozzle. So something to keep in mind, the higher the flow you have, the more random, chaotic kind of looks you'll get out of it. So if you didn't want to use any power heads in your tank, you can crank quite a lot of flow out of this without blasting your corals. That's definitely one nice benefit to it. So playing with different speeds, one of the main things I noticed is depending on, as you turn up the speed, you do get more of a random motion. So in low speeds, you might not be getting the true benefit out of the RFG. You do want to crank your pump up about it. Who do I think this is for? If you have a bunch of SPS close to the nozzle, this is definitely much more subtle and gentle than a Flow Accelerator or say, the kind of knockoff version that I printed. The real one does have more random flow, where the other one is more just like a straight accelerator nozzle. Alright guys, that was a kind of good look at the RFG. I think this thing will be amazing in a nano tank. If you're at a large reef tank, depending on where your placement is, if there's SPS close to the nozzle, then it's definitely going to make it more of a subtle flow. If you do want to get more of the random flow out of it, you do got to crank your pump up a bit. You don't get quite as random on low speeds. So a couple things to consider. If you have a fairly powerful return pump, you might be able to get away with just this and not worry about other power heads, in a smaller, reasonable sized tank.